welcome again. And oh my God, today we have another special guest. I'm so happy, interviewing all these women that are really heroes, I would say, and great artists. So today we have Elaine Alvarez. She was with us in San Diego Opera. She was singing Florencia en el Amazonas. She was the main diva singer. And welcome Elaine. ¿Cómo estás?
Hello.
Bienvenida. Bienvenida a Ópera en tu sofá, un programa para honrar el legado musical hispano.
Así mismo.
Anyway, so welcome. How are you?
I'm good. I'm in Miami, in my new home with my husband, and everybody's safe and healthy, thankfully. So, no complaints on that front. Getting ready to celebrate Christmas.
Okay. So, we would like to know some of your background. I know that you have a lot of Cuban heritage. ¿No? Tienes padres cubanos o abuelos cubanos. And so, why don't you tell us a little bit about your childhood and growing up? Where did you grow up? Where you were born? All of this information.
Yo soy 100% cubana americana. So I am of Cuban parents. Both of my parents emigrated here, and with my brother and sister and all of my grandparents and uncles and aunts and cousins. I was born here just after they arrived. So I was the first American in my family. That's why my first name is an American first name, even though everybody tries to make it Hispanic. I get like Elaine, Elena, Elena. I'm like, no, just Elaine. But I was the first American in the family, and I grew up in Miami, which is, essentially what Cuba would have been had it remained free. And it was a great experience to grow up here. Spanish was my first language. My grandparents always lived with us, so we were multi-generational. My mom is a music teacher. She's retired now, so that's where the classical music really came from. My dad was a physician, so it was a family that believed a lot in education. So the three of us had to work really hard in school. But I gravitated to music pretty much from the beginning. My mom was getting her master's when I was born, and then her PhD a little bit later at the University of Miami. And so she was singing in the concert chorale there, even though her instrument is piano and classical guitar. And she just said that I was just constantly singing back to her. Whatever she was singing, I would start repeating. And she just noticed that I had an affinity for singing, and she started working with me and teaching me to read music and ear training. And then she started taking me to the opera when I was 6.
Wow,
And that was
that's
pretty much it.
fantastic. Which one was your first
It
opera?
was, it was Bianca e Faliero. It was so random. I don't think I've ever seen it again in my life.
Uh-huh,
But it was here in Miami. It was Florida Grand Opera, which in those days it was called Greater Miami Opera.
uh-huh.
And everybody came here. Pavarotti came here, and Debbie Voigt. I remember seeing Cecilia Bartoli at the very beginning of her career when she had her first album that broke. That was amazing. I saw Jesse Norman. I saw so many amazing singers. The three tenors came here. I saw Pavarotti on the beach, which was like probably the most perfect concert I had ever seen.
Wow.
And it just made a really big impact on me. And then when I was 14, I saw La Boheme, and that was it. Like there was something about seeing that. And, up until that point, I was really into musical theater because of course I was a kid. And musical theater is so accessible, but it was the whole thing of storytelling through singing that I was so obsessed with. And then I see La Boheme, and I don't remember who was in the cast because it was so long ago, but I remember that they were all relatively young.
Uh-huh.
And it was the first time that I thought, oh, younger people do this too. And I was obsessed with the story. Like I was sobbing at the end of it. And I said to my mom, okay, this is what I want to be. I want to be an opera singer.
Wow.
And and that was it. My mom found me this amazing voice teacher here who was, it was a married couple where the husband was this amazing Cuban tenor, Cesar Antonio Suarez. He had toured a lot in the 70s with Beverly Sills and Joan Sutherland because his specialty was bel canto music. And the wife was the one that taught the technique. That was really like, they were a tag team. But having those early lessons with Cesar, he was this very large man who just radiated joy. Like the minute he walked into the room, it was like sunshine. And so when I would start singing to him, and I would sing, you know, these classical songs, the 24 Italian Arias book, and I was so nervous and inexperienced, and then he would just start singing back to me with this big smile. And he's like, you know, it doesn't have to be perfect. You just have to be happy with what you're doing. And that set such a tone for how I would always relate to music, is just that we love this. And yes, it is an art form that often pushes perfectionism and correctness, but ultimately you have to put all of that aside, and you just have to make music, and you have to be happy that you get to make music. So those are my early influences.
No, and you know, also I was thinking with the tradition that you come from, you know, la música cubana es algo increíble. It's such a rich heritage, musical heritage. I mean, I was talking to I tell her I call her Elaine. Sorry, no Elaine.
No, así está bien, no te preocupes.
So anyway, so she was singing a zarzuela, but written by a Cuban composer, and she was just doing it in Madrid before this COVID hit. And you know, it's such a rich heritage with music in Cuba. So I'm amazed. This is great that you have.
It was an amazing experience, and it was also a really big responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Cecilia Valdés, which was the zarzuela that I was doing, is the most iconic zarzuela ever to be made in Cuba by Cuban composers, and it really celebrates the merging of, you know, Afro-Cuban folk Cuban music with classical music and with melodrama. And it's the piece that they're most proud of in the theater tradition. And the woman that is actually the most famous Cecilia Valdés, Alina Sanchez, she lives in Madrid. So of course, I immediately got in touch with her because there was no way that I was going to debut this icon representing Cuban people in exile and not, you know, meet with and learn from this icon as much as I could. There are so few opera singers that were able to get out of Cuba and have careers. Her career was really limited by the fact that she couldn't leave. You know, her voice, if you go back and you listen to the recordings of her from the 80s, from when she was my age, this is a major international voice. But because she was not able to leave Cuba, the world didn't get to experience that. And so now that she is out and she lives in Madrid, for me to be able to speak with her, to celebrate with her, she is a really warm person and really took me under her wing and really treated me like her family. And, you know, I felt her pride in me. You know, I felt her seeing her dreams realized in me, that I am able to continue to go out into the world and, you know, represent Cuban women. Yeah, and it was just wonderful. It really felt like a legacy moment. And then the show, the cast was almost entirely Cubans, Cuban Americans or Cubans living in exile in Europe, except for the characters that were meant to be Spanish, the criollos. Yeah. And so it was really cool. Like Linda Mirabal, who's another icon of Cuban drama, she played a very important character. And so we got to like hang out and immerse ourselves. And it was different than in Miami, where the Miami Cuban is a little bit different than the Cubans abroad. So it was a really great experience. And then this music is so
it's incredible.
Yeah, and it's ingrained in a whole generation of people, you know. So you feel a lot of pressure doing it right and serving. Like I remember, like there's a couple of people here in Miami that are from like the Cuban tradition, the Cuban theater. They emigrated here. And I was consulting with them about things because, you know, things change when you're in productions where the people that are making the decisions are not native to the culture that they're portraying. And so I would send back videos and be like, what do you think? And I was getting a lot of notes. Even just like about choreography and like what to do with your hands when you're dancing.
That's fantastic. Bravo for doing that. Anyway, so folks, let's listen to Elaine singing. And,
Ahora eso te va a dar una crisis cada vez que lo tienes que decir.
sí, Elaine. Oye, so we're gonna listen to Ana Bolena, and this is from the Mad Scene. Yes.
This is the Mad Scene of Anna Bolena of Donizetti's Tudor trilogy, The Three Queens, and it's probably the most amazing music I've ever sung, the hardest music I've ever sung.
Okay, let's listen to it. Thanks. Okay, so you have this technique that you need to sing bel canto, and you have it. So I bow.
I mean, I definitely think, it was the right time to take on that role.
Mhm.
And I had a lot of time to prepare it. I started preparing it a year in advance. But it really felt like the best singing I'd ever done in my life. It's really hard music, and you have to be ready to do it.
Okay. So now I want to ask you about three questions. Who are your icons? I want you to describe your voice. And third, I want you to talk about your teachers. Who
Okay.
are your teachers? Who are your teachers? So, in any order you want to answer, en el orden que tú quieras, nada más háblanos.
Well, I'll start with the last question about my teachers because it also relates to the first question. So I've been really lucky. I've had a lot of really incredible teachers. I already spoke about, my first voice teachers. Um, it makes such a difference. It's not just about how you get the information, what the information is the technical information that they're imparting sound, but how does it hit you, and how does it shape you as a human being? Because ultimately that's where our artistry comes from. We're not little machines where we learn how to play all of the notes or sing all of the notes correct, and then that's going to be perfect and the audience is going to love it. So I was really lucky that the teachers that I had from when I was 14 to then when I moved to New York City to start school just before my 18th birthday, onward, they were all human beings first. And they treated me like a human being first. They were people that were kind and nurturing, people that saw my individuality and celebrated that. They weren't trying to turn me into like a cookie cutter of what an opera singer should be, which I think that there is a lot of pressure in academia to make everybody the same, to not offend people with individuality. And thankfully, my teachers were not worried about offending anybody with my individuality. They really celebrated that. I think about my voice teacher in college, Joan Patino Diarnell, who's still at Manhattan School of Music now. Warren Jones, who is still my mentor, is the great pianist, still a very dear friend who I pretty much run everything past him. And these were teachers that, I started with when I was 18 years old in the case of Joan. And they taught me how to grow up in this business and how to wield my voice as it changed through the years. But then as I got a bit older, I started working with people that were real heavy hitters. So first was Marilyn Horne, who I started working with through Warren. And Marilyn had a really, really big impact on my life as a singer because aside from the fact that she had me come to her festival in Santa Barbara 2 summers in a row, and they were very formative summers for me, it was also that she introduced me to my first agent. So I signed with Columbia Artists when I was 25, and which is very young. And that was really at the encouragement of Marilyn, who just really believed in me, really believed that I was something special and that I could handle being launched that young. And I moved to Germany as a result of that. I got a Fest contract. And so, my first few years as a singer was living in Germany before you had internet in the apartments. So there was a lot of book reading. It was me and my dog, basically. And then later on, I started working with Renata Scotto. So I met Renata when I was in Chicago for La Boheme, and she was the director. And at that point, we began a really wonderful relationship where I was able to go back and work with her. I went to Rome when I was preparing Tosca to work with her for about 6 weeks. We also spent a lot of time on Verdi style. And, she's someone that I will write to and send clips to and just seek out her feedback whenever I can, because the impact that she made on me in those early years was so formative. And so that leads me to your first question. So who are my icons? It's really Scotto and Callas. Those are the two on my shoulders. when I heard Calas, I think I was like 12 or 13. And at that point, I had been listening to a lot of Joan Sutherland and a lot of Kathy Battle. And I was used to these very perfect sounds. And then I hear Calas for the first time. And I'm like, I don't understand what this is. I shouldn't like this much. This is not a perfect sound, but it was life coming out of a stereo, you know? This woman's ability to convey emotion while executing these unbelievable passages. It was like nothing I'd ever heard. It's still really like nothing I've ever heard. And it really made a huge impact on me. And then Scotto, I started listening to Scotto a little bit later, and it was all about this incredible seriousness towards the music, this fidelity to the score. And that's really what she taught me when we worked together, was that, you know, my first job as a musician is to take the score and to really study the score and what the composer wrote precisely, and not listen to recordings and just do what people have done, which often it changes over time. But to ground myself in what the composer rendered on the page and then filter that through me. You know, I think of Daniel Catan's score, and you know, when I got this score, this music to me was just so special, and this text was so special that I approached it the way that I approach Puccini, the way that I approach Verdi. I wanted to be precise and then find freedom inside of that world that was made.
So let's share with the audience that I met Elaine when she was singing Rappaccini's Daughter in New York. I was playing the harp in the Brooklyn Botanical Gardens with
gorgeously.
And so she was singing the main character of this opera that was premiered in San Diego, Rappaccini's Daughter. And I just went like, who is this singer? And I remember this moment, and because I was just like, I went to the rehearsal, and then we had rehearsals together, and I was taken by what you were doing.
I connect with Catan's music in a way that feels very meditative and very spiritual. It's music that I feel. Like I see it on the page, but I see it also in like color, and I don't know, and it's funny. I was watching some clips of our Florencia not too long ago, and you know, it's been a few years since we did it, and I started watching the last scene, and my eyes start tearing up, and I'm full of goosebumps because I'm instantly back on the boat, standing there in the dark with a spotlight in my face. It's so it's so visceral, the experience of that music. And it's why I love doing it. Both operas that I did, both Catan operas, were wonderful experiences, positive experiences, collaborative experiences, because that's how the shows are written. They're written to be collaborative, to be celebratory. And to me, those are highlights of my career. When I think back, both of those jobs were highlights for me, of just one of those moments where like, the music is amazing and the experience of the show is amazing. Like the rehearsals into the performances all the way to the end. So thank you.
Well, now let's go back to you describing your voice. I know it's a difficult question for singers, but it's also important for people to hear what do you think about your voice? Where is it?
Well, I mean, I think like from an academic sort of, you know, technical perspective, I'm a spinto. I've grown into the spinto repertoire over the years. I have, you know, a voice with a very expansive range and a good size voice. And I have a lot of agility in the top. So I sing a lot of Verdi, a lot of early Verdi. And that's why I started moving towards bel canto before all of this craziness happened. I had a norma, my first norma, finally on the books, and it was canceled because of all of this. So I know it'll come again. It'll come again. Yeah. It's the last bucket list opera. Okay, it will come. But you know, so from like an academic description sense, that is what I am. But it's funny. I don't think of myself like when I think about like my talent, my artistry, it's like the first thing that comes is not the voice. I feel like it's the connection of my person, my soul, my heart, my emotional life to my voice. Because I think it's all one thing. Like I'm teaching now, which I have not taught this much. I've done, throughout my career, I've done a lot of master classes and a lot of teacher talks, career talks. And periodically I'll do like an artist in residency where I'll work with people for a concentrated period. But I have not taught this much. And teaching makes you really identify what your philosophy is about what you do and the art form that you love. And so I've been working with people that are pre-professional. So either they're in grad school or they're just out of grad school. And, the thing that I sort of keep stressing is like, it's not enough to be correct. It's not enough to be able to just sing the notes and be right and be stylistically appropriate and wear the right jewel-toned wrap dress, You have to have something to say. And that's also something, the freedom to do that, the permission to do that is sometimes lacking in the academic setting. We're not often encouraged to think for ourselves. We get into the habit of having a teacher tell us how we should interpret something or how a phrase should be colored. And so, a great piece of advice that Scotto gave me was, mean what you say and the voice will color naturally. The color will come in naturally. And so when I think about my voice, that's what I think about. I just think about a fidelity to artistic expression.
Like
so a marriage.
Like Scotto.
Todo, todo. Because if somebody comes to see me and I'm not giving from here, then yeah, they'll think, okay, she has a nice voice, but like, so do a lot of people. Yeah. So what is the point? What's the experience that I offer? And so I try to, just be vulnerable as much as I can and try to communicate from the stage to as many people as I can so that when they leave feeling like, they know me within the framework of this world that
it's like we have touched your heart.
Yeah, and I think people get that. Like even if you've never seen an opera before, I mean, we had tons of people coming to Florencia that had never been to the opera. And I mean, I was getting, messages on Facebook and on Instagram of lots of people coming to say, I had never been to an opera before. I had no idea that it was like that. I thought it was this sort of like static formal thing. And that really makes me happy. Like being people's first makes me really happy.
Great. So now we're gonna listen to you again. And I know that you don't want to tell our audience what they are gonna hear. So this is a surprise by Elaine Alvarez. Let's listen to you. speechless because I've never heard this opera by Verdi, Jerusalem, and so I'm speechless. That's why.
Yeah,
So
it's almost never done. It's an adaptation that he did later of I Lombardi. So I Lombardi he wrote really, really early in his career, and then later he was asked to write a French grand opera, and he adapted this, made it much longer. This one is I think it's 5 acts if I'm remembering correctly, because it includes the ballet, which I have to sit on stage for. It's the longest role. I mean, I don't know. I think it is the longest role that I've sung. I had 3 arias to sing in this, and then a million ensembles, so many high Cs. I don't think I've ever sang so many. But I'm so proud of this recording. And it's also the first time that I worked with Speranza Scapucci, with her as a conductor. And Speranza, I worked with years ago when she was Muti's assistant. I did a tour with Muti of the Rossini Stabat Mater. And so that's how we became friends. I would go and coach with her in Vienna. And then when she started transitioning to conducting, you know, I get hired for the role, but I didn't do it for like 2 years or something. And then, so when I finally get the information of who the conductor is, I'm like, oh my God, it's Speranza. So we've gone on to work together since then. And, you know, she's a brilliant conductor, having a brilliant career.
great women conductors.
That's right. And she's amazing. I mean, amazing. So that was really, it was hard work, but it was really, really satisfying work. And, you know, nobody does that opera. So we had a lot of musicologists and a lot of people that were, you know, music academics, opera academics who wanted to come see it live. And it was very exciting. All the shows were sold out, and we're supposed to have a DVD release. We did an HD broadcast. And my understanding was that they're going to do a DVD release because there's so few recordings. So that would be my first DVD.
Okay. So now, you know, we are at the end of our program. And before we say goodbye, is there anything you want to say to our folks?
I just want to say thank you to San Diego, and that community loves its opera. And I felt that when I was there. I felt so supported. Everybody at the Opera House that worked there had been there for years and years, and it had that family vibe. And it just really, it remains one of my most favorite jobs. I actually just did a Puccini talk with Joey Mekovich, who was the conductor for Florencia. And one of the things that he had asked me was like, you know, what's one of the highlight jobs that you had in your career? And I talked about San Diego, because we just had such an amazing time. And it was also, you know, the first time that I had ever done an opera where all the singers on stage with me were Latin American. There's not that many of us.
We're proud of that. We're proud.
And to look around and, you know, and for Florencia, you know, we were on that boat. And we were all in that one room on the boat. So it was like between scenes, there really should have been a camera back there, like a GoPro or something, because it was such a show. Las locuras. So I hope that we can do that again. I hope that I can come back to San Diego again whether now or after this madness is over, because you guys I know are producing work now, which is incredible. I just had such an amazing time. So
well, thank you. You know, I think it's very special to be in San Diego because there's a lot of loyalty.
That's right.
All the patrons, the subscribers, there's love towards the art form and towards the company, and I feel it too. And it's really amazing.
Well, I mean, every great city needs its culture, right?
Sí, exacto. Bueno, Elaine, pues muchas gracias por estar con nosotros en el programa. Thank you so much. And folks, we will see you next time. Gracias.
Gracias.
Chao.